Just like part of the continent.
Any parts that seem to emerge on Twitter, I definitely internalize and support. But, Bo...
Do you claim Freddie Mercury?
Why? Is that a thing? Wait, no. Really? Is there something there?
They're South Asian.
We'll discuss this, but first, Robert Kraft, Bomani. Today, the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office announced they have formally charged the Patriots owner with 2 misdemeanor counts of soliciting prostitution. Where does this all leave the NFL today?
Well, I think the NFL's in the same place that they were before, is that once this is adjudicated, they're going to have to figure out what to do with him, and a punishment is certainly in order, I think, for him on this, because there was a time where something like this would elicit laughter. Like, getting caught soliciting a prostitute was more embarrassing than anything else. But I think we are more sophisticated in the way that we view these things, and this just isn't some dude, allegedly, who was just trying to get something and pay for it. This is somebody who was complicit in the activities of a human trafficking ring. That's big, that's huge, and that merits punishment according to the NFL's personal conduct policy.
My brain went to humor when I first heard this news as well, but reading the New York Times article that came out this weekend, listening to the police today, they say the monsters are the men who are the clients here, and that they don't even think of the women involved as prostitutes. They think of them as victims and people to be rescued as part of an operation here, Bo. And for me, the question morally is, what did Bob Kraft know? How obvious was this? Because the police say that these are women who are perhaps in debt, right? They're women who came over to this country under other pretenses, people who fear for their families back home. And so they're not even cooperative. So do they go to this place because they know that the people involved won't speak, or is that something that they happen to overlook in the process?
I think that this is as obvious to those men as they wish for it to be. If they choose to give thought to anything involving these women, it becomes pretty obvious what's going on here. If you choose to think about the women and their humanity. Now, the problem is, I don't think that you go to the Orchids of Asia Day Spa because you think about the humanity of the women who happen to be there, right? And that's part of the problem that we have here, is very often we think of this as a victimless crime, and there are certainly elements where people are soliciting prostitutes where you could make that argument. This one just isn't one of those. And so if we're dealing with the league that wants to make it clear that they respect women and believe that women should be treated a different way, then this is right in line with what they claim their agenda is.
Yeah, the police are about women who were sleeping in the building, who were cooking on hot plates in the back, who had poor hygiene, who in some cases were dealing with up to 1,000 men a year. And how blind any of us want to be to that is, I think, a separate and pressing question from what the NFL must now do, Bo, which is figure out a way to actually do some damage in terms of a punishment, because how do you punish a billionaire?
Well, you punish him by suspending him from his team, because Bob Kraft cares about being associated with his team. He cares about being in the box. He cares about being on camera. Like, why do you think he's going to the Rock Nation brunch, right? He's going there because he's the owner of the New England Patriots. He gets a measure of cachet from being that dude. So that is the thing that you can take away from him. The thing is, Kraft is making this difficult for him because he's running the I didn't do it route, at least as of right now, because this thing is, you got to be going in, you got to be coming out. How do you know what happens? Well, the police seem to have a pretty good idea of what happened in the 15 minutes that he was in there. You can't get no massage in 15 minutes, Bob, not one worth paying for.
No. And the question, obviously, too, is how do you punish a billionaire financially, right? Let alone one who's your boss, because Jim Irsay got docked $500,000. $500,000 to Bob Kraft is nothing, but the idea that Bob Kraft, in terms of the legal proceedings, gets to avoid the perp walk, gets to avoid the mugshot. Is there something, as you say, that could trigger some level of shame?
Well, that's all this is shame is what they're operating with. It's not going to be the money. Like, they're going to have to do something to make this, like, hit. If you want it to hit, it's going to be something like you have to be away from the team for a year. That's the sort of thing that it's going to take in order for it to register.
Right, because draft picks, for instance, that seems unfair to everybody else.
Well, they're not going to do that on a matter that's not of a competitive edge. But shame is what they have on their side. And I'm telling you, man, the government ain't pushing up on these super rich dudes unless they really think they got it. Next name is LeBron James. After losing to the Anthony Davis-less Pelicans Saturday night, LeBron answered some questions about his young teammates very honestly.
When you've never been there or know what it takes to actually, shoot for something like that, sometimes you're afraid to get uncomfortable. In the last few years, everybody's so accustomed to the losses that I'm just not accustomed to. Like it is basketball. Is that the most important thing while we're doing this? It's the most important thing in your life at this time. I know it's going to be very challenging, just because of the experience that the roster had at that point in time. I knew it was going to be challenging from that sense, but I felt like we could still play better basketball.
Pablo, how should the young Lakers be feeling today?
Well, should and how will they feel are two different things, because I think they should realize that LeBron James is not the problem on the Lakers. LeBron James is, LeBron James, and so you guys should check yourselves. But in the process of checking themselves, Bo, they're going to listen to a guy who basically said, you don't care about basketball enough. And from a certain perspective, if I'm any of those young guys, I'm thinking to myself, this is kind of like hearing a competitive eater tell me to diet. Because LeBron James is A&R in 2 Chainz' record. He's having Anthony Davis on his HBO talk show. He's doing all this other stuff, right? But in LeBron's defense, he is, in fact, LeBron James. He delegates. He cares about basketball more than the other stuff. It's just that I don't know if that will motivate more than it does alienate.
Well, the question is, what discussions did he have with them when we weren't around before it got to this point? That is what I wonder. Was this like a last resort sort of thing? But this is an important distinction. He didn't say that basketball needed to be the only thing in their lives, just the most important thing in their lives.
That's right.
And I think the question that he's asking, and we saw this when he was there in Cleveland the first time with those young dudes, is, do you realize what we're playing for here? Do you realize what the stakes are? Because the Lakers do have a bunch of young dudes who have not been expected to win yet. Like, there's been a minute of Brandon Ingram's career where there was an expectation of winning before LeBron showed up. Kuzma, all these other dudes. And so I could see him looking at them and being like, hey, man, it's getting real right now. This isn't another one of these seasons where you can just miss the playoffs and we go get another draft pick. No, we got to get this thing here done right now. And do you get how important it is? It is possible that they do not.
Yeah, they may not. And the tricky thing is, beyond the injuries that LeBron alluded to elsewhere in his little scrum there, the young guys actually haven't been the worst parts of the team. The young guys have been struggling here and there, but on a plus-minus basis, they're positive. It's the free agents. It's Rajon Rondo, it's JaVale McGee, it's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, it's Lance Stevenson. Those are the guys who haven't really been carrying their weight. And so when it comes to the locker room and the team, it does feel like maybe there's a little conflation of two possibly distinct stories.
Or what the young guys have to get is, yeah, those old guys aren't playing that well. That still means you have to play better. It ain't about weight, it's about the outcome.
The last name is Ole Miss. Bo, on Saturday, 8 Ole Miss basketball players took a knee during the national anthem in protest of pro-Confederacy rallies happening nearby. Let's watch.
Now, you notice the first young man knelt, and then from there, others do it in solidarity with that one. And that one is a G. Good gracious.
Yes.
Shout out to that one dude standing next to them like, no, I'm standing. I ain't doing nothing.
No. Some guys joined in later.
Look at my man who keeps looking around.
Right. Like, oh, we are. This is on camera, right? This will be on the internet.
My mama watching this.
But, Bo, what's your reaction to this kind of a story?
My reaction to the story is about the reactions to the story, and the question that I have for people is, why do you care? And I do not ask that rhetorically. I ask that sincerely. Why do you care? What we can't do is take pictures like these and know that they will inflame some people and then decide it's a big story just because it's going to make some people mad. What you have with these people who came into Oxford, and look, Ole Miss tries its best to separate itself from all the Confederate nostalgia stuff. They've really tried to push away from that. They see themselves as more of a progressive bastion within the state of North Carolina. But look, they still call themselves the Rebels. That state flag still has the stars and bars on it. Like, if you really want to come talk about this as a big story, then you need to talk about what all of this is that makes it into a story in the first place. If all you've got is this protest that has charged up America, then what you're doing is exploiting something that is very real and going about it in a cowardly way.
Yeah, there's a door to unlock here, but behind which a lot of Mississippi history is there for us to dive into. But Kermit Davis, it's worth noting, at the beginning of the season, before the season, volunteered that his players would kneel for the anthem and would not kneel for the anthem and would respect the flag.
When he took the job out of nowhere.
Correct. And now, after this, he said a different sort of a tune, if we can listen to that.
This is all about the hate groups that came to our community and try to spread racism and bigotry, in our community. It's created a lot of tension for our campus. I think our players made an emotional decision to show these people they're not welcome on our campus, and we respect our players' freedom and ability to choose that.
And, Bo, what's interesting to me is that he seemed far more conciliatory towards the gesture because of the proximity of the protest and the rally to his own home, to his building. But to me, the question has always been, don't you see that that's how people anywhere who've done the same thing feel about this? This is not abstract and far off. This is close to home for everybody who has been doing this.
He was conciliatory about this because he had the choice of choosing between the people outside and the people on his team. He was conciliatory about this because he's going to have to go into homes and try to get people to come, and they don't want it to look like you choosing those cats over your own players, right? So I think it was easy for him to think that when he took that job, oh, y'all tell them we're going to stand for the national anthem. They'll love me for that one. What the hell you gonna do when these cats do this right now? Unless you gonna come behind and pull them up by that collars, you gonna have to stand by them because that's your squad.
And up next, can Kyrie Irving do the thing we need him to, which is save Boston and make